Good morning, everyone. Welcome to BodhiBrew, offering advantage through insight. I'm your host, Confidi Kong, Creative Director of Bodhi Research Group. In today's episode, we cover short-term strategies, long-term culture with the President and CEO of Crabel Capital Management, Michael Pomada, and our CEO, Dr. Ranjan Bhaduri. Together, they will discuss the realities of short-term CTAs and how Crabel's internal culture keeps them at the forefront of innovation. Michael Pomada has been with Crabel Capital Management for over 17 years. Crabel is a global alternative investment firm specializing in systematic, automated trading of worldwide futures and foreign exchange. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy a cup of brew with us.
Welcome to BodhiBrew. We're very, very fortunate to have Michael here. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Ranjan.
And today we're gonna talk about an assorted number of topics, and really I think we should start by explaining to the audience what it is what are short-term CTAs.
Yeah, no different than, other quantitative short-term managers where we're looking for anomalies in the marketplace, and it happens to be that there's a lot of them in the futures markets. And if you think about the space, though, short-term futures is actually a really small piece of a very large universe. There's something like $4.5 trillion in hedge funds. There's about $350 billion in futures traders. Short-term futures is about $12 billion. Very small space.
Yes, and really it's to me, it's an underrepresented space in general, whether like managed futures in general and CTAs, commodity trading advisors, another way to say managed futures. Just again, for the audience's benefit, it's all exchange traded instruments. And this is something where you see the equity markets, it's exchange traded instruments, everything is well accepted. And then sometimes people hear the word derivatives and they don't realize that there's exchange traded derivatives. Maybe like they're just conflating, OTC kind of exotic derivatives that might have a lot of counterparty risk and so forth. And this has led to some folks, some otherwise very sophisticated institutional investors having a blind spot to the managed futures space. So I think that this is something that's unfortunate because managed futures can benefit a lot of institutional investors if invoked correctly. But with regards to short-term CTAs, another thing that I've observed is that there seems to be more alpha decay in general in that segment, in that there's less short-term CTAs that have been in existence for a long time. And obviously Crabel is one of the pioneers in this space, but when you think about trend following, there's more trend followers that have been around for a long time than there are short-term CTAs. There's very few. Why do you think there is more alpha decay in the short-term CTA space, or do you agree with that?
Oh, I totally agree with you. It's a great question. I think I think it's almost on a continuum. In my mind, anomalies that exist that in the longest term, tend to decay the slowest. And then I think as you get closer and closer to the microstructure, essentially, they're right down to, the microsecond, the decay is actually much, much faster down there. We sit, our average holding period is about 1 day, and that does decay through time. If you're not improving it, you will go out of business. That is a full stop statement. It is a very, very tough space. You have to be excellent at a number of things, which I know we'll talk about. But most importantly is you have to stay ahead of that curve.
That continuous improvement, maybe we can just go into that a little bit more. And that brings in culture, right? Because you have to avoid the complacency and you have to have that commitment culture to research. how do you handle that? Like, how do you lead that at Crabel?
Yeah, it's a really an important part of what has made Crabel great over all these years, 30 plus years in business, managing money for the largest institutions in the world, and that is, we have a mantra, and the mantra is continuous state of improvement. Get a little better each day, in the words of our COO, Rick Russin. That idea that you can walk in and find like the magical unicorn that's going to make infinite money is not true. What is true is that you can get a little bit better if you try hard at it, and you work at it, put the resources behind it. And I think, that really is one of our defining aspects of our culture at Crabel. Everybody feels that.
It's something that's so important. There's success, and then surviving success, and that's that's really a function of having the right culture and the research culture, and that culture of continuous improvement. And in terms of research itself, how has it changed? Like in terms of the micro structure of the markets, about 12 years, 15 years ago, that when there was the golden era of the high frequency trading and scalping and so forth, when it first really started to take off, and not that it doesn't exist today, but how is that? Because there's continuous changing, the computing power is getting more and more. So you're in that short-term space. How does the rest of the ecosystem really impact you and your research and your ability to sort of continuously improve?
Yeah, there's probably two parts to that. I think one is when you think about the amount of data available today, it's just astronomically more than we've ever had, right? And I think if you were to look into the future, it's gonna be more and more and more data. And so I do think point number one is that if you're not sort of pushing that edge a little bit, you're probably falling behind because other people are going to be doing it. The second thing is, if you think about the evolution of trading in general, and you brought up high frequency trading, and this sort of replaced the old floor traders. I always find this funny. It's I think that everyone thinks of the floor trader when high frequency trading first came on the scene, and it really changed things for a lot of us, right?
Sure.
When it came on the scene, everyone thought they were evil and it was going to ruin markets. And people asked us, "Are you going to make money anymore? Then are these going to eat up your alpha? They have more data, they're faster." And I get it. I understand that they could be scared about that, but I think that there's an underlying assumption there that these guys that were on the floor were really super nice guys, and they weren't about profits. They were puppy dog tails and ice cream cones, right, Ranjan? I mean, they were such sweethearts. No, those guys were there making markets to make money. Yes. And they provide a service, and we're in that ecosphere together. And so when I think about high frequency trading today, I think it's buyer beware. Make no mistake, but we're a part of that ecosphere as well, and we need to make sure that we understand what they're trying to do, why they're trying to find us. Trust me, they are. But that means we have to get better and better and better at our execution, be it tick to trade speed, but also in researching how to better, execute your order in the marketplace, because they are going to be there looking for you. I just don't think they're any worse or better than the floor traders. So just that's the world we live in. So
yes, no, but you brought up a very key point on the trade execution, and I've had the benefit and pleasure of coming on site to your LA headquarters and seeing the trade execution platform that you've built. How much is that vital to your organization in terms of from the research and trading side? How do you continue to sort of view that and continuously improve that?
Yeah. So it's imperative, and I think we talked a little about alpha decay at the beginning of this conversation, and if you think about, let's just think about, so alpha decay, okay, where would that show up? Well, it show up, and let's look at all the other, people that are in our space. Are they all still around? No, the space is actually pretty small, as we said, and it's hard to be in this space. And there aren't a lot of survivors of 30 years in the space. Zero. I don't know, maybe one or two, I guess, but not very few. Not very many.
Very few.
And I think, and I'm in a roundabout way, I'm actually going to answer your question. But the question, the thing about that question is, it's imperative that you invest time, money, resources in making it better, because if you don't, you'll be like one of those guys that went out of business already. And we like those guys too.
Yeah.
They're not,
of course. No, I that is without doubt. I mean, your organization and the folks, like, it is also a community, and you're very much part of it and so forth. But that also brings me to another question that is more top of the house from the research perspective. You're given a certain, it's your decision with whatever budget you're spending on research, how to budget that, towards, okay, I want to put a priority project on the execution platform. I want to be looking at some new futures markets that, that we're not currently trading. I want to look at some new potential alpha generating algorithms, different techniques, from, whether it's machine learning or some other, mathematical or whatever it might be, exploring, because research is all about exploring. And, as we all know, 99 things out of 100 don't work. And then you're coming out with and putting in what does work, or trying to. And how do you ascertain, or how do you determine how much of your allocations you're going to put to the different areas of research? Right, so there's the other top of the house, which you're at the top of the house in your position, obviously. But there's the one decision about, okay, how much do we allocate to research versus marketing versus compliance and legal versus all these kinds of things. That's not my question now, because that's I think what's more interesting to the audience is, within the research bucket, how do you decide to allocate your resources there?
Yeah, understood. I think for someone that, in our space, alpha research is the dominant, investment. There is no question. While, investing in the data team, algorithm team, yes, very, very important. And they are, big budget items for us. But, alpha research, it's really, in the end, what drives everything at Crabel. It's a sort of alpha first mentality, and as you mentioned, the fact is that you have to stay ahead of the decay. And so if you're not working really hard, at the alpha, honestly, you won't have any alpha. And so it's a competitive space, and so a majority of the budget, frankly, is put towards alpha research.
But some of your alpha is also coming from your trading, the sophisticated trade execution that you have, that platform. So I mean, do you so it's both, right? In that sense. But I'm stumbling here a bit, because there's blurred lines. That's how and maybe it's just not bucketed in the clean way that I'm saying, right? Because you can be doing alpha generation from the trade execution, which is one of the big strengths I view of your organization. But then, of course, the core part of coming up with new techniques, new pattern detection and so forth, that's also
the power of machine learning, the power of ChatGPT, for crying out loud.
Yeah, how did that's another question I had for you, and it's, again, I'm so excited that you're here, so I'm jumping around quite a bit. But how has that changed the research within Crabel, the fact of ChatGPT or its equivalents? Has it, or is it more used in other areas of the organization, from an operational perspective and so forth?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think everyone knows it. I'm not going to say anything new here, which is that I think anyone who hasn't felt the power of ChatGPT is missing out on something that's quite miraculous. How fun is ChatGPT? It's so great. I think from the firm's perspective, we use it across the firm in every department, number one. But I think the biggest benefit really has come in writing or cleaning up code. It really has been, it's a leap. You don't have, in today's world, you don't have to be an expert coder to write some great code because ChatGPT is excellent at it. Now you have to ask the right questions and you have to understand what code is coming out. Is it doing what I want? Or am I getting the results that I expect? Et cetera. But, to go from sort of like, coding 1.0 to like to being advanced, ChatGPT can like basically puts you there. And I think for every organization, that's amazing. Things that were done in spreadsheets in the olden days.
Yeah.
You can just feed the spreadsheet in and say, write me code that does this. I mean, it's amazing.
Yes. Yeah. It's been a game changer for sure. But it still is a situation where it really empowers the researcher to be more efficient and effective. Is that a fair statement?
It's 100% right.
I think I'm going to return to the question about longevity because, again, it's something really, really impressive that Crabel has been so successful for so long, and definitely the culture and the research culture and the continuous improvement. But what else contributes to that?
Yeah, I think it's I'm glad you asked that question. And it's really, it comes directly from Toby Crabel, my mentor, chairman of the firm. And his saying was, live to fight another day. And, inside of that is the concept of the risk management at Crabel Capital Management. And I think it was the differentiating framework from which Crabel really went on this amazing journey. And we talk about it a lot at the firm, which is try to keep the drawdown small, upside will take care of itself. That's another Toby quote, and it's an important part of our core that's how we feel every single day is, reduce risk as much as we can.
That's so vital. And no, it can't be understated what you just said about risk management. And that's, it goes to Warren Buffett's, wisdom as well. Michael, I stated towards the beginning of this podcast, I gave a true disclaimer that I'm going to jump around a lot. So yep. With that, I'm going to jump back to culture because, again, I think that's so important. And maybe you could comment more about the Crabel culture.
Yeah, sure. I think one thing that we do that's really important is thinking about like personal responsibility. There's that effect, the bystander effect, right? If there's a tragedy going on and there are lots of people seeing it, no one acts. But if there's one person there, they act. And so you really have to try hard. I think as a culture, you have to try hard to instill in people that there's not like some secret team working on something somewhere else, And so our saying, our mantra, one of our mantras is, and it's, we have to be a little careful with this one because usually it has a swear word in it. It's my fault. To take that personal responsibility, to not be a bystander. There isn't a secret team somewhere else on some other floor working on it. You have to work on it.
Yes.
And I think, that kind of like personal responsibility ties people not only to the firm, but also together. You can count on your coworkers to really take personal responsibility for what they're doing.
Yeah, to follow through. No, it makes so much sense. I mean, there's sometimes in some areas of finance, there's too much ego and people don't want to take the responsibility, and the bystander effect can be very damaging to culture. In mathematics, there's a saying, mathematics is not a spectator sport, and neither is a successful trading firm like it, and so that resonates a lot with me.
And Ranjan, just on that topic, it's also important to be able to say, hey, I made a mistake. Let's fix it,
exactly.
And being able to feel good enough about yourself and your culture that you can say that, accept it and move forward as a team. And that's, like some places there's no mistakes.
Yeah.
Come on, this is reality,
exactly.
Right? Mistakes occur. But taking responsibility for it, don't shy away from it. Take responsibility for it. Move forward. Get better next time.
Exactly. Like that's a very healthy culture, and that's a research culture, really. I mean, so it translates or extends into all of the Crabel culture. I've also heard about the mantras. You've spoken about that to me before. Is that something you could share with the audience?
Sure. So we just talked about that one, which is it's my fault.
Yes.
One we probably talked about a little bit was live to fight another day. And I think the one we haven't really talked about, which I think is really important, especially regarding a question you asked earlier about how how do you have success that continues, living success, yeah? And that one is no sacred cows. When you're at a firm founded by Toby Crabel, and there's a lot of ideas that came from him, they're the bedrock of the return stream. And but even Toby, no sacred cows. You have to be able to go in there and say, you know what, this system needs to be tweaked, or this problem needs to be addressed, or can I make it better? And forget about whether or not, in fact, I think just generally speaking, we just think it's never good enough, no matter what the result is.
Yeah, no, that's sacred, no sacred. And the fact that it comes from Toby himself, that's fantastic, because that is so critical to adapting, right? And Somerset Maugham had a quote. Well, Somerset Maugham's one of my favorite writers, and he had a quote that tradition is a guide, not a jailer. And that sounds very much like you 100%. Have the benefit of all of Toby's, trading expertise, and he's a pioneer in the space, pioneered the space, one may say, but he's the one who's also stating, nothing is too sacred, we can change it, right? And so that's fantastic.
Right, and that goes to the last mantra, which is get a little better each day.
Yes.
And that's part of that mentality.
No, absolutely, Michael. And again, I'm going to pivot and jump around like I have been throughout this discussion, but I spoke in the beginning about how I believe that there's not enough allocations that many more portfolios, institutional investor portfolios, would benefit with managed futures, and that it's underrepresented. There's blind spots with too many investors and allocators. Maybe I'll just touch upon, and this is something we could do for a whole podcast, so we very just give the high frequency version, but the benefits of managed futures. I mean, here we have something that's exchange traded, liquid, transparent, and a tremendous diversifier. And you've, seen that, lived that for so many, your whole career pretty much.
Yeah.
So it's something that I just wanted to remind the audience about, that the benefit of managed futures. I'm going to ask you to share with young professionals on the research side, what are some things that they should be thinking about in order to be a good researcher?
Yeah, I think when we hire many young researchers to come into Crabel, and I think that after many years of hiring, I think that if I'm looking for just one characteristic, I'm going with creativity. I just think in the end, if there's just one thing you can have, it would be the ability to creatively solve a problem, or creatively look through data, or use a new mechanism, be it machine learning, AI, whatever, to find new ideas, to find anomalies. And I think creativity, it's a really hard thing to when you see someone's resume, creativity, and finding anomalies in the marketplace, it's not like number 6 on their resume. Yeah. It's hard to find it. So I think it's an interesting one. But along with that, I think persistence. It's just if you as you said earlier, there's 99 ideas that don't work. It's the one. In real life, if you think about it, truly, it's probably more like 999,000 to one. That don't work. They don't work as well as you want. And so, if you are not persistent enough, if you can't find it within yourself to say, okay, I got to stick with it, which includes waking up, going to work, doing those things. So I think that's sort of like a lost art. It's just like things that are worth doing take time and effort and energy. Yes, absolutely. There's a grit and perseverance, and it has to be part of it, and creativity only comes from that. If it's not magic, and so forth. So that is wonderful. I have to bring this up because it's just a fun fact, but Toby Crabel was a professional tennis player prior to his career in finance. I know you're a fantastic tennis player. Who wins between the two of you? Well, even at 70, Toby will whip my butt.
Wow. That's impressive. Very inspiring.
He's a great player.
Well, I want to thank the audience for listening, and thank you, Michael, for joining us.
Thank you, Ranjan.